For 70 years, the boundary between the United States and Canada was the longest unguarded line in the world. It was predictable. It was secure. It was guaranteed. But as of this morning, guaranteed is finished. Donald Trump just tried to trap Canada. He put a weapon to the head of the Canadian economy. He demanded complete submission on the Arctic, on energy, and on the border. He thought Mark Carney would flinch. He thought Canada would collapse like a cheap lawn chair. He was mistaken. Carney didn't flinch. He didn't scream. He didn't rage tweet. He simply severed the cord. And now the consequences are expanding faster than anyone in the White House prepared for. In the next 30 minutes, I'm going to show you exactly what occurred inside that closed-door meeting. I'm going to show you the document Trump thought would force a capitulation. And I'm going to show you why Mark Carney's response just changed the balance of power in North America forever. You are watching history shift. And if you live in the US or Canada, you are about to feel this in your wallet. So let's cut through the noise. What actually happened today? At 4 a.m. Eastern Time, reports started leaking from the White House. Sources inside the West Wing said Trump was furious. He was yelling at aides, demanding to get the Canadian Prime Minister on the line. Why? Because 3 days ago, the Trump administration sent a private ultimatum to Ottawa. They called it the Continental Security Framework. That's fancy political speak for a demand list. And this list wasn't asking for lower dairy tariffs. This list was insane. According to leaked drafts, Trump demanded 3 things. 1. Unrestricted access for the US Navy in Canada's Arctic waters, effectively stripping Canada of its sovereignty over the Northwest Passage. 2. A guaranteed price cap on Canadian oil and electricity sold to the US, meaning Canada would be forced to sell its own resources at a discount, regardless of the world market price. And 3. Canada had to immediately pull out of its trade talks with the European Union and China. Trump gave Carney 48 hours to sign it or face a 25% universal tariff on everything crossing the border. Everything. Cars, lumber, steel, food. It was a bullying tactic. It was sign this or I burn your economy down. Trump expected Carney to fly to Washington, kiss the ring, and beg for a better deal. That is how Trump operates. He creates a crisis, and then he sells you the solution. But Mark Carney didn't fly to Washington. Instead, he stood in front of the cameras in Ottawa this morning. He looked calm, he looked focused, and he announced that Canada was declining the invitation to negotiate under threat. He didn't counter-offer. He rejected the premise entirely. And then he dropped the hammer. Carney announced that Canada has triggered the sovereignty clause in its energy exports. He announced immediate trade bridges with the UK and Japan, and he explicitly stated that Canada will not under any circumstances surrender the Arctic. Trump's bluff was called. And now, for the first time in modern history, the US president looks powerless to stop his closest neighbor from walking away. You might be thinking, is it really that bad? Is this just political theater? Let me show you the receipts, because when you see the numbers, you realize this isn't a game. This is a collision. Look at this chart. This is the Canadian dollar against the US dollar over the last 24 hours. When the leak first hit, the loonie tanked. Wall Street shorted it. They thought Canada was dead in the water. But look right here. See this spike? That is the exact moment Carney finished his speech. The loonie didn't crash. It rallied. Why? Because the markets realized something Trump didn't. The markets realize that Canada sits on what the world needs: energy, critical minerals, water, food. And if the US doesn't want to pay market price, the rest of the world will. Carney signaled stability. Trump signaled chaos. Money likes stability. The Fortress North memo. We need to talk about the leaked document. Washington insiders are calling it the Fortress North memo. This wasn't a trade proposal. This was an annexation plan in all but name. The language used, and we have screenshots of the draft here, uses phrases like mandatory resource alignment and security integration. Mandatory resource alignment. That means Trump wanted to treat Canadian oil wells like they belong to the US Strategic Reserve. He wanted to treat Canadian hydro dams like they are American batteries. This isn't partnership. This is a landlord telling a tenant what to do. And Carney treated it exactly like what it was: an insult. The border slowdown. You want to see the real impact? Look at the Ambassador Bridge between Detroit and Windsor. This footage was taken 2 hours ago. Trucks are backed up for miles. Why? Because US customs on Trump's orders started enhanced inspections immediately after Carney's speech. It's a punishment. It's a tantrum. But here is the catch. Those trucks aren't just carrying Canadian maple syrup. They are carrying parts for Ford, General Motors, Stellantis. Every hour those trucks sit there, American factories lose millions of dollars. Trump is trying to strangle Canada, but he has his hands around the throat of American manufacturing. We are already seeing reports from Michigan and Ohio, key states for Trump, that shift managers are sending workers home. Why no parts? Why no parts? Because the president is fighting a trade war he doesn't understand. This is the part of the story where we have to look at the psychology of the man in the Oval Office. Donald Trump operates on fear. He operates on leverage. His entire career, real estate, TV, politics, is based on finding the guy who needs the deal more than he does and squeezing them until they break. He looked at Canada, and he saw a victim. He saw a smaller population, a smaller military, an economy dependent on the US. He thought, I can crush them. But Trump made a fatal miscalculation. He is fighting the last war. He thinks this is 2016. He thinks he can just tweet a threat, and the markets will bend to his will. But the world has changed, and Trump is losing control because his old tricks aren't working on new realities. First of all, Trump is isolated. Europe hates him. China is playing him. Mexico is wary of him. He needed Canada. Canada was the one safe ally he had left, the one reliable friend. By attacking Canada, he has proven to the world that no alliance is safe. If you are Japan, if you are the UK, if you are Australia, you are watching this and thinking, if he does this to his brother, what will he do to his cousin? Carney knows this. Carney knows that if he stands up to Trump, the rest of the world will quietly back him. Second, Trump is trapped by his own promises. He promised to bring down inflation. He promised to lower gas prices. But what happens if Canada restricts oil flow? Prices skyrocket. What happens if Canadian lumber gets a 25% tariff? Housing costs explode. Trump is effectively sanctioning his own voters. He is making life more expensive for the very people who put him in office, just to satisfy his ego in a fight with Ottawa. And you can see the panic setting in. Look at his Truth Social feed today. It's manic. 12 posts in 2 hours, all caps calling Carney names, calling Canada ungrateful, blaming the deep state. That is not the behavior of a man winning a negotiation. That is the behavior of a man who just realized he pushed the wrong button. He pushed the self-destruct button, and he's trying to blame the wiring. Now look at Mark Carney. You have to understand who this man is. He isn't a reality TV star. He isn't a loudmouth. He ran the Bank of England. He ran the Bank of Canada. He deals in trillions, not billions. He understands the plumbing of the global economy better than almost anyone alive. When Trump screams, Carney calculates. Trump fights with a sledgehammer. Carney fights with a scalpel. He ran the global response to the 2008 financial crisis. He knows how to stabilize a system under stress. He understands liquidity. He understands bond markets. He understands currency swaps. Trump understands leverage, but only one kind, brute force. Carney understands 50 kinds of leverage, and he knows which one to use when. He sees the ripple effects. This is a chess player versus a checkers player, and the board is tilted toward the patient one. Think about the optics of this morning. When Carney made his statement, he wasn't angry. He wasn't indignant. He thanked the United States for decades of partnership. He acknowledged the historical relationship. He affirmed Canada's commitment to NATO and continental defense. And then, without raising his voice, he said no. Clean, final, respectful, but unmovable. Compare that to Trump's response. All caps tweets, name-calling, accusations of betrayal. Who looks stronger? The man who shouts, or the man who doesn't need to? Global leaders are watching. They are taking notes, and what they see is a prime minister who can stand his ground without throwing a fit. That is the kind of leadership that builds alliances. Trump is losing the narrative war. He might not lose the trade war, but he is losing the story. And in modern geopolitics, the story is everything, the economic reality. Let's be brutally honest. If Canada and the US decouple, both economies take a hit, but the pain is not equal. Canada exports about 75% of its goods to the United States. That is a massive dependency. But here is the flip side. The US depends on Canada for 60% of its crude oil imports. The US depends on Canada for 90% of its aluminum. The US depends on Canada for a third of its electricity in the northern states. If you drive a car in America, there is a 40% chance it was built using Canadian steel and aluminum cars. If Trump puts a wall up, a tariff wall or a legal wall, you pay for it, not Canada, you. The price of building a house in the US is about to go up. The price of filling your gas tank in the Midwest is about to go up. And for Canadians, this is scary. Let's be honest. The US is 75% of your trade. Turning that ship around is dangerous. There will be pain. There will be job losses in sectors that rely solely on the US. But the alternative? The alternative was becoming a colony. The implication here is that the United States is no longer the indispensable nation. Canada just proved that you can say no to the US president. If Canada can do it, why not Mexico? Why not Germany? Why not South Korea? Trump thinks he is projecting strength, but by forcing Canada to walk away, he is actually revealing American weakness. He is showing that the US can no longer command loyalty. It has to earn it. And right now, it's not earning it. So where do we go from here? The next 72 hours are critical. There are 3 scenarios. Scenario A. The Trump double down. This is the most likely. Trump sees the rejection. His ego can't handle it. He implements the 25% tariffs tomorrow morning. He closes the border crossings. He tries to inflict maximum pain to force Carney back to the table. Result: a massive market crash in New York and Toronto. Supply chains snap, and Carney goes to the World Trade Organization and the UN, isolating the US further. Scenario B. The quiet walk back. Trump's advisors, the few sane ones left, show him the poll numbers. They show him the stock market drop. They tell him, "Sir, we're losing Michigan if the factories close." So Trump declares a partial victory, claims he taught Canada a lesson, and quietly drops the demands. Carney wins, but stays quiet about it to let Trump save face. Scenario C. The escalation. This is the nightmare scenario. Trump declares a national emergency. He tries to seize assets. He uses the US Navy to harass Canadian shipping in the Arctic. This sounds crazy, but remember who we are talking about. If this happens, we aren't talking about trade anymore. We are talking about a military standoff between the 2 closest allies on Earth. This is the part where leaders usually calm it down, but Trump doesn't do calm. He thrives on the noise. He needs the conflict. But he has never faced a leader like Mark Carney before. Someone who doesn't play the game, but changes the board. The special relationship is over. A new reality has started. Canada has drawn a line in the snow. They have rejected the demand to kneel. Now the question is, how much is Donald Trump willing to burn down just to prove he's the boss? And the bigger question for you is, can the US economy survive a war with its own shadow? Mark Carney just bet his political life and his country's future that the answer is no. Do you think Carney is protecting Canada? Or do you think he's poking the bear? Is this bravery or is this suicide? I want to hear from you. Drop your take in the comments below. And listen, if you want to know what happens when those tariffs actually hit, you need to be subscribed because the news is going to move fast and we are going to be right here watching it. Subscribe. Turn on notifications. You're watching history. Don't blink. We need to stop and talk about the Arctic because this is the piece of the puzzle the mainstream media is missing. They are talking about milk and lumber. Trump is looking at the ice. Why did Trump demand access to the Northwest Passage? It's not about boats. It's about trillions of dollars in untapped resources, oil, gas, rare earth minerals. As the ice melts, that water becomes the most valuable shipping lane on Earth. It cuts travel time between Europe and Asia by 40%. Whoever controls that water controls the trade of the next century. Canada says this is our internal water. It's our backyard. The US has always said it's an international strait, but for decades, they agreed to disagree. They kept it quiet. We won't ask. You don't tell. Trump just ripped that agreement up. He wants the US Navy to patrol those waters as if they were the Gulf of Mexico. Carney's rejection here is crucial. If he gave in on the Arctic, he wouldn't just be a weak prime minister. He would be the prime minister who gave away the country's future geography. When Carney said no, he was backed by the Inuit leaders. He was backed by the military. He was backed by every Canadian province. Trump didn't understand that. He thought the Arctic was just frozen water. He didn't realize it is part of the Canadian soul. By attacking the Arctic, Trump united Canada in a way no Canadian politician ever could. Let's look deeper at the energy demand. Receipt for the pipeline leverage. Trump demanded a price cap. He wants Canadian oil at a discount. Here is the reality he is ignoring. The US imports more than 4 million barrels of oil from Canada every single day. That is more than the US imports from Saudi Arabia, Mexico, and Iraq combined. Many US refineries in the Midwest and on the Gulf Coast are specifically built to process heavy Canadian crude. They can't just switch to Texas light sweet crude overnight. It's a chemistry problem. If Carney decides to maintenance a pipeline, if he decides to slow the flow by even 10%, gas prices in Chicago, in Minneapolis, in Detroit, they don't just go up, they spike. Trump thinks he has the leverage because the US is the buyer, but in a tight market, the seller has the power. Carney knows that if he restricts supply, global prices rise, and Canada makes the same amount of money for less oil. Who loses? The American driver. This is the economic gun Carney has on the table. He hasn't used it yet. He hasn't even touched it. But Trump knows it's there, and that is why the White House is panicking. They know they can't run an election campaign with gas at 6 ounces a gallon. There is a political angle here inside the US that is fascinating. Trump's base is populist. They like America first, but they also hate inflation. Carney is playing a very sophisticated game of public relations targeting the American voter. By giving interviews to American business channels, by appearing calm and rational, Carney is making Trump look chaotic to his own donors. Wall Street donors are already calling the White House. We know this. Big money from New York is telling Trump, fix this. We can't afford a trade war with our biggest customer. Trump is now fighting a two-front war. He is fighting Carney in Ottawa, and he is fighting the donor class in New York. And usually, when Trump fights the money wins. Carney is banking on that. He isn't trying to beat Trump. He is trying to make it too expensive for Trump's backers to keep supporting this fight. It's a wedge strategy, and it's brilliant. Finally, look at the timing. Carney made this announcement just days before the G7 summit. He is setting the table. He is going to walk into that room with the French president, the German chancellor, the British prime minister, and he is going to say, look at what Trump is doing. If he does it to me, he will do it to you. We need a unified front. Trump hates multilateralism. He hates groups. He likes one-on-one fights where he is the big guy. Carney is building a team. If Canada, the EU, and the UK align their tariffs, if they align their carbon border taxes, suddenly the US is the one on the outside looking in. This is the global realignment we talk about on this channel. It's not just about trade flows, it's about values. It's the rule of law nations versus the rule of power nations. Canada has firmly planted its flag in the rule of law camp, and by pushing Canada away, Trump is pushing the US further into isolation. This is dangerous. An isolated America is an angry America, and an angry America is unpredictable. But Carney has decided that unpredictability is better than submission, and that is a decision that will shape the next 50 years of